This is a quick review of Man on the Run, which is the story of the seismic, heartbreaking shock in Paul's life, the breakup of the Beatles, and how he put his life back together after that. Now, when you have a breakup, they say that you're on the rebound, and you could say that Wings was his rebound. So in a way, it's the story of Wings, but it's not really the story of Wings. It just happens that Wings kind of is in the frame because it's kind of the chapters of this story begin with the Beatles breakup and ends with the murder of John Lennon. Because you could say that, Wings is that stepping stone, it's that transition, because he's, the first thing he wants to do naturally enough is kind of replicate the Beatles, because that's where he was happy and content and secure. And eventually he realizes he can't do that and he goes solo. Because although Wings were successful, there was always the problem of him being the megastar, and they Wings wasn't really a proper band. It was effectively a backing band, or Paul plus Wings. If I was going to criticize this, I would say that although this, I think it basically gets the balance right, in not going too deeply into Wings and remembering that this is the story of Paul's journey. It could have gone a little bit deeper, because it kind of doesn't quite show some of the things that Paul did to be democratic. We don't see Joe English's Spot, or the songs that the others wrote, and or Linda's bit. We don't see that attempt to kind of be democratic, and that's kind of a shame. It's also a shame that some of the greatness of of Paul's 70s career is not really there, because it's kind of, there's a lot of his soft side, I would say, not enough of his rocking side. But this is nitpicking really, because this documentary really serves the story so well that I suspect I may be guilty of wanting things that I particularly like to be in the documentary when they're not strictly necessary. But there is that lingering sense that Paul has now been put straight on Ram. He realizes that though it was slammed, Ram is actually a very good album, and therefore Ram kind of gets a bit more airtime. But Back to the Egg is, comparatively speaking, skipped over, because Paul sees that album as a failure, and it's framed in this documentary as Wings going out on a whimper, when, if you ask me, it's actually a masterpiece. It's a damn good swan song at the very least. They can't really do that because we haven't got to the point yet where Back to the Egg has got its due. So anyway, that's a small criticism, and they do use some of the music from the album. So yeah, I would give this a 9 out of 10. There's lots of footage from the archives that you've probably never seen before, and some of it's very high quality. I've never seen some of the Wings Over the America stuff look so good. It looks amazing. And if I was comparing this as a pure documentary making to almost any other documentary about the Beatles I can think of, this is right up there. This is actually much more creative than the anthology is, which is quite sort of traditional in its format. And it's actually not only more creative, but it's just better storytelling. And they don't use talking heads in this, which obviously that's the benefit of that is you don't slow the story down, because it's better to have voices in the background and you're watching footage. That's actually more efficient. But also the benefit of that is that you're not constantly switching between the present and the past, and you're not aware of the differences that people in the dates that people are telling you stuff. You can hear voices and they all sound like they could be talking, could have been recorded at the same time, and that I think is very, I don't know what the word is, grounding, or it just feels like it's cohesive. So that's really good as well. So I love the way that the imagery is used in this dynamic way, and all the collages, and it's very cutting edge, some of it, but also it's just good editing. And I like, I like the way that Paul, I think he's prepared to sort of take certain stuff on the chin and not hide it. Like, for example, when the early Wings members say why they left the band, Denny says, well, he was living on peanuts, basically. And there are good reasons for that, which I won't go into here. It wasn't, I don't think, actually all to do, all Paul's fault. But Paul, I think is happy to sort of to have that on record rather than try and hide it. On the other hand, it doesn't go into some of the darker sides of things, like with Jimmy and Denny, but it doesn't need to, because it's not really the story of Wings. Certainly not the warts and all story of Wings. It's the story of Paul's journey. You could say his flawed journey to the contentment that he has today. It doesn't give us the epilogue of Paul, which is that arguably his most successful band is actually the one that he's with now, because he's been with them for something like 25 years, 26 years maybe. But of course, the love of his life were the Beatles, and there's some wonderful insights from some of the speakers on this. It's so cool that they have Sean Lennon. I really like Sean. He's always got thoughtful, insightful things to say. He was born 2 days after me. But that's got absolutely nothing to do with it. And yeah, they have some Chrissy Hynde says some cool stuff. Mick Jagger. I thought Mick Jagger was a weird one, actually, because he just sort of appears here and there, and I don't know, it feels slightly random having Mick. But anyway, it all hangs together pretty well. And this is a far, far better documentary than I would ever have expected Paul's company to make. I would have thought it would have to be something, if we expected a good documentary about Wings, really, I would not expect to see it on Amazon Prime. I would expect it to be done by a fan on YouTube, actually, because I just would expect something, if not a hagiography, something pretty bland. And it never actually gets that bland. It actually maybe doesn't go as deep or as detailed as I would sometimes like, but I'm giving this a 9 out of 10 because it's very good.